What's up, guys? Hope you're having a great day and a great week. Last week we talked compression 101. This week we're talking staging compression. And so I would highly encourage you, if you haven't checked out the video on signal flow and last week's compression video, they're great precursors of this video, and so they're on the YouTube channel or on Instagram, and I think that would be helpful. But just to do a quick recap, so with compression we talked about the 3 lanes that compression can really improve your mixes. So first one, each input has its own dynamic range of louder moments, quieter moments, and so a compressor can help to narrow that dynamic range and give you more consistency control out of your input. The second lane is how each compressor has its own coloration and unique thumbprint it can put on your inputs and overall mix, and so using those to get different alternatives can improve your mix. And then lastly, when looking at a subgroup side of things, when you throw a compressor on a subgroup and you have multiple channels going through that subgroup, it can glue and bring cohesiveness to that subgroup and have all of them dynamically move in the same direction. So, and then some cautions are just to make sure you're not over compressing, losing your dynamics too much, potential feedback issues and noise floor issues. So just things to think about. So what is staging compression? Staging compression is the idea of using multiple compressors throughout your signal flow to get leveling, with the idea being that you're trying to get leveling, consistency, and control while still maintaining the fact that it's a live dynamic mix with life. And so those two don't necessarily always lend themselves to each other, and so to get both you have to work specifically at that. And so staging compression is a great way to do that. So let's talk through one input as an example, and just that will help us get through the concepts and the ideas. So we'll use the kick drum. So on the kick drum, I'm thinking, when I'm thinking staging compressions, there's 3 stages. The first stage is actual channel compression. Second stage is subgroup compression. And then the third stage is kind of your master bus compression. And so in the first stage, I'm using the actual channel compressor on the kick drum to do the first amount of leveling. And so I'm doing kind of a 2-to-1, 3-to-1, a little bit slower attack and release, and then I'm getting gain reduction maybe -2 to -3, maybe even -4, and then on top of that, then I'll stack 1176, and I'll have that in the 8 ratio mode, and I'm getting maybe 5 to 7 out of that. And between those two, those are leveling the input, giving me consistency in the hits, and giving you a pretty good overall consistent sound. And then from there, we're going to go to our second stage, which is the subgroup. And so right now I'm doing a skin subgroup. That could change in the future, but I'm doing kick and toms in there. And so I'm using an 1176 as my first compressor in the second stage, and I'm using the all mode, which puts it in a limiter side of things, and it's really limiting, but also still pretty transparent, and so that gives a nice cool effect and to that subgroup and gluing it together. And then I have a second compressor. I'm using the Yamaha bus compressor on top of that 1176 in the subgroup, and that's doing, I'm doing only maybe 1 to 2 gain reduction. That's a very small amount of compression, and that's just kind of doing a little bit more leveling on the subgroup. And then the final one is in the master bus, and that's another Yamaha bus compressor, and on that one it's really just the final gluing, locking in all of your mix, shaving off the little dynamics, and just kind of fine-tuning and locking it all together. And I'm maybe doing -1. I'm just touching that compressor. And so the idea is, why does this work well? Because it can get very complicated, and you don't want to do that for no reason. So the idea is, when you have maybe one compressor on something, you're trying to carry all that weight, and you have all your gain reduction, and you don't have a lot of flexibility. Whereas if you have multiple compressors, you can carry out that gain reduction amongst those compressors. And so, for example, on that first stage, you have the channel compression, and that's leveling, and then you have the 1176, and then that's leveling what is already another leveling input, but it's doing it just with minimal gain reduction. And then same thing on the stage 2 in the subgroup side, you have 1176 that's leveling all these already leveled inputs together, and then the bus compressor is then taking that level, then just leveling it even just a little bit more, and then lastly the master channel, you have your bus compressor in there, and it's leveling the entirety of the mix just together. And so my thought is that you're able to be very finessed through all these compressors, and you're able to carry the weight of the compression throughout them, down the signal flow. And so in doing so, I've gotten farthest down the line of being able to achieve a very controlled mix, but still have it be very lively and dynamic at the same time. And so, hope that is helpful. Two other just quick thoughts are, whenever you're implementing something into your mix, a new concept, a new idea, know that you're probably going to take 2 steps backwards before you're taking 8 steps forward. And so that happened with me when I implemented this. I felt like my mixes got worse and I got discouraged, but I had to work at the craft, work at the concept, and the better I got at it, the more I was able to then move forward and get my mixes farther than they've ever gotten. And so I want to encourage you in that. Don't let yourself get discouraged. And then lastly, take it slowly. It is complicated. I'm constantly having to check all my compressors, make sure I'm not eating it into any of my plugins, and it can be very easy to get lost in your plugins. And so I would encourage you to just start with 1 compressor in each stage, see how that works. You can always add on, but just start slow and see how it works, and hopefully you can see yourself grow through that. So hope this is all helpful. Would love to hear the ways that you're using stacking plugins, stacking compression in your mixes, and how you've seen results through that. So thanks for tuning in.